cutting edge technologies and innovations that will enable India's defense industry to meet global demands while fostering growth at home. A key aspect of this vision is the partnership between foreign OEMs and the Indian defense industry. These collaborations, along with India's offset policies, are critical in catalyzing technology transfers, joint ventures, and local manufacturing, thereby enhancing India's defense capabilities and export potential. The session will explore how these partnerships contribute to the development of indigenous technologies while aligning with global standards. Once again, I'd like to request all our guests to please take your seats. May I request all our panelists to please join us on the stage? Mr. Adam Watson, Managing Director, BAE Systems India. Mr. Neeraj Gupta, Chairman, SIDM Committee on International and Export, Managing Director, MKU Limited. Mr. Michael Fernandez, Country Head of India, Lockheed Martin. Mr. Puneet Kaura, Chairman, SIDM Delhi Chapter and Managing Director and CEO of Samtel Avionics. Ms. Vrinda Kapoor, Chairman, SIDM Startup Forum and co-founder, DV2JS Innovation. Ms. Vrinda Kapoor, कहाँ है? Okay. Okay. Ms. Vrinda Kapoor, Chairman, SIDM Startup Forum and co-founder, DV2JS Innovation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'd now like to begin our plenary session. I would like to invite Sri Jayant D. Patil, past president of SIDM, to please give the opening remarks.
Good afternoon. I think the panel has a real challenge, a post-lunch session, and that too on a subject which a lot has been spoken in the morning. When we talk of make for the world, make for India, make for the world. When we look at this, as we heard in the morning, and to fill up a little more on the statistics part, make in India, big numbers are happening. There is a growth. But as Raksha Mantri said, neither Raksha Mantri nor a whole lot of us in SIDM are greatly elated. We are happy that things have moved, things have become better. But if we say, are we happy, are we delighted? The answer is no, because there's far more that can be done. Honorable Raksha Mantri very recently made a statement that by 2029, March 29, the defense industry will produce 300,000 crores of defense production will start happening within the country. Now, from that, when we start looking at the hard numbers out of the 173,000 crores of the current capital budget, the hard equipment budget is just about 1.5. So, from 1.5 to reach 3 means a clear over 5 years, we need a CAGR which is far, far, far higher. And I remember the days when Manoj Parikar, because of whom we created SIDM, he had committed that this industry will grow in 2015. This industry will grow at 15% CAGR. So if we are talking of 15% CAGR, we certainly will double every 5 years. Now the fact is, are we having that 15% CAGR? That's on the first part, which is Make in India. Now we have seen there are years in which the capital budget allocations have been meager. There have been years in which they have been somewhere around 17-18%. So it fluctuates between 17-18 on the higher side, on the lower side, closer to the inflation. And we have seen that this variation obviously now creates a challenge when we look at that kind of a number, unless something quite significantly different is done. It was nice in the morning sessions as a result to hear that we need, as I see, a multi-pronged approach. One, more and more involvement of private sector here, which Raksha Mantri very rightly said, from the current 20% target to go to why not 50-50. The second pillar is essentially to go on exports. And of course, the third pillar, as he again said, collaborate, let the foreign OEMs, the major ones, come here. Now, on this backdrop, when we speak in the afternoon, we will debate among us. I will give a couple of minutes, less than 5 minutes for everybody to speak, and then we'll get into some little amount of question answers. We have on the panel, as you see, Mr. Adam Watson, BAE India, and of course, BAE has had enormous amount of presence in India for more than literally, if I go back about going to be 70 years now. And this is essentially where, when a global major who's invested in India for a long time, it's important to listen to what they feel in terms of what is needed. Are they happy with what position they have right now here? Would they do more? If they have to do more, what is that they need Government of India to do? What is that they want SIDM to do? And obviously, when we are looking at the major, Kampunit, join us straight. Now, this is one OEM. The second OEM here, the foreign OEM, is Michael Fernandez of Lockheed Martin. Again, amazing success stories on what they're doing with Tatas. And as a result, again, something which is not a matter of hollow statement when it comes to make in India, make for the world. And essentially, we see out of their and Tata's relationship, things are not only happening in India for India, but there's enormous amount of what they're doing is going out. So there are two examples of what a foreign OEM can come here. And the answers, Mr. Fernandez, for you are the same. Are you happy with what is happening? Are you going to be looking at something more to be done by the government? What would you want SIDM specifically to do? And of course, what is that some of us jointly, and in addition to that, let me say, with the Defense Export Council that we were just announced today morning, the registration has been complete. And with having created a DEPC, we see a new beginning in terms of truly growing the defense exports, because this is a council which we all believe, which we will soon have a formal kind of a launch, and we're trying to get it at the absolute apex level within the Government of India. With that, when it comes to, obviously we see a lot movement forward in terms of taking the defense export agenda, making it big. Neeraj is a man who we all have lost count. He's very aptly a chairman of SIDM's. Uh, I would say international cooperation related whatever initiatives under SIDM we do. He chairs that committee, and in addition to that, a man who heads an organization which probably is right now, and I won't be exaggerating if I say at least 120 countries he has done exports. This is a case of MSME and how MSME can succeed still in three-digit numbers, just about aspiring to become a four-digit crores in terms of turnover. But at that scale, to operate anywhere and everywhere. This year, anybody who went to Eurosatory, the most prime position as you enter was the MKU stall, which is Neeraj. Now, obviously, when we have Neeraj kind of a person, he said, "Sir, मुझे rag नहीं करना." So I'm going to ask him some nice questions. Again, with what we are doing through DEPC, what we could do more. Now, to him is a very specific one additional question over what I asked my other foreign colleagues is what is that you think have been problems in where we today have reached? And someone who's gone to so many countries, I'm sure he has enough stories to tell in terms of the problems faced and how those problems could actually be addressed in terms of taking our export agenda ahead. Puneet is a second generation technocrat, man known for avionics. They have a JV with HAL. And Puneet again is chairman of our this region SIDM forum. So we today have not only SIDM doing just a matter of uh, uh, prime SIDM as a body in 7 different states. We have our own councils now, their own chapters. He heads the Delhi part of the chapter, but a man for more than 25 years, very focused on to extreme high-tech areas. And again, Puneet has been a man who essentially built enormous amount of, I would say, cutting down on the import. While direct exports is one aspect, the second aspect Raksha Mantri talked about in his speech was all about don't count only that you are going more and more in terms of exports, but how will you cut down the import and start comparing your import export ratio and start becoming surplus. Now, if we heard that as a signal, one man who essentially has very sizably been living through that kind of a dream is a person who obviously it would be great to hear from him again that real trouble and the problem which they actually have seen. And the idea of sharing some of this is that most of the industry today, when they are aspiring to get into something of this nature, they won't have to go through the same pains and they know there's somebody who actually is available, if not as a private consultation, but at least as a part of the same SIDM as a mother body through that in terms of giving you friendly advice, the do's and don'ts. In addition to those problems, obviously, how does he see in terms of going forward what we want to achieve in terms of India's one, the 3 lakh crores of defense production exactly 5 years from now, and of course, doing more and more of exports. We heard the target also is to reach 50% in defense production in private industry. And of course, that also means that what government has been talking earlier of $5 billion, $5 billion when it was spoken, it was 25,000 crores. Today we are very close to that original 25,000 crores. That 25 became 35. Today it is 42. Now, whether we reach 42 in 2025, we'll see. Because given the current kind of increase, and if we really build on that 33% CAGR from 21, we'll be close. We'll not be reaching there, but we'll be close. Brinda is our startup forum chairman. And Vrinda is one amazing example of what a person who is not from the domain actually can do. And she takes pride in saying that I'm not a semiconductor industry person, but she's built a semiconductor industry. So what she's actually built with her partners, the technocrats together, is a first major semiconductor company in India dedicated for defense. And I had thought on a defense semiconductors when we talk, silicon, everybody knows silicon carbide, gallium nitride, but there's two more. And that's what she says, sir, I'm not putting three, I'm putting five. Now, the recent US deal that you heard of last month is all about what Vrunda is doing. So I'm not going to take the thunder out of Vrunda in terms of sharing what all she is doing, but it would be interesting and worthwhile to hear a little more about her journey, those troubles and problems she went through towards getting India to be able to do what we want to do in India, and of course, make this a place as a factory for the world. I think with that as a preamble, I would like to invite speakers. Uh, Again, going by that most of our younger members are young, I'll go by the seniority. And that's essentially, I would like to invite Adam to take on the floor, not the eldest, but being in India for the 70 years that you've been operating here, the dais is yours. Please tell us about what I mentioned. Are you happy? Would you like something more to be done? What is that you would like us to do as SIDM, as Government of India? And of course, how do you see this momentum of Make for the World going ahead? Thank you.
Dhanyavad. Dhanyavad, sir. Am I happy? I am very happy. And I think BAE Systems in India is also very happy. Um, in terms of empowering industry, uh, it's a great privilege to be able to sit up here within an industrial base that has experienced 30 times growth recently. And to give you some perspective of that, when I was in Australia, I was the chair. I worked for BAE Systems, of course, but I was the chair of an industry association down there with several hundred members, SMEs, academia, primes, even some government folk in there. And in 2016, the Australian government really got behind defence industry. Policies were set, procedures were enacted, money was invested, and industry invested, and they went up and up and up. And then recently, a year or two ago, there was a change of government, and the policies changed. And now, if you were to talk to the vast majority of the membership of the association that I was chair of, they are very disappointed. That is not the case here. So in that context, it's an extremely exciting time to be part of defence industry here in India. And with the recent reinstatement of the government, you have at least 5 years to to exploit the current policies and the current settings, which enable real growth, I think, within defence industry. And that's not even considering the greater vision of Vixit Bharat 2047. So BAE Systems, yes, 70 years, 18 platforms. And for those of you who have heard me before, I apologize if I'm repeating myself here. But for those who haven't, BAE Systems is very proud to be part of the story and the fabric of defence industry here in India. I'm very proud to say that I've had business discussions with every person at the top table here, except maybe you, sir. And I'm also very proud to say of the champions that were awarded today, we have relationships with several of them as well. And that's to say nothing of the individuals in the room who we have other relationships with. So big picture numbers, our supply chain in India is consists of 80 organisations, 50 of them are MSMEs, and we are approaching over the last 5 years $200 million worth of exports. That's Indian companies exporting their goods and services into the UK, the US, Sweden, and other places where we function. So how has that happened as a journey? And I think I've only got 5 minutes, so I don't want to hold the mic too much. We started, I guess, early with the Make in India, Vampires, Avros, HS-47s, Jaguars, and most recently the Hawk, over the collaboration with HAL, who are still our very important partners. We endeavoured to make things here and transfer the technology. And over time, for some of those aircraft, in particular the HS-47 and also the Jaguar, we've transferred full engineering authority and therefore OEM status over to HAL. So that's one way to empower Indian industry, and no small player there in HAL, who are now doing amazing things with their own aircraft, including the Tejas, which we are also a part of. In fact, it's nice to be part of HAL's supply chain as opposed to HAL being part of ours. We're very proud to say that we have about 600 Hawk around the world. And what does that mean for us? It means that India is the largest operator of Hawks globally. And we are endeavoring to work with companies here in India to qualify them from an OEM perspective for components on that aircraft. Now, if Indian companies are manufacturing those components and they're certified by the OEM, that enables that supplier to export that component into the other fleets around the world. So that's potentially back into the UK, Australia, Malaysia, all over the place where these things are flown, and in fact, even into the US. We are still sort of looking at what more we can do with HAL, but we're very proud to say that we still have over 300 aircraft flying for the Indian Air Force today. And you know, a lot of folk in our company are passionate about what we do for the services, because at the end of the day, we are here to support the warfighter. And if we can do that properly and we can do that with the right capability, the business side of things will look after itself. Most recently, we have delivered to the Indian Army 145 ultra lightweight howitzers. Again, a great program which demonstrates the ability of Indian industry to be part of it. And most recently, this is after we've delivered the last gun. The Indian Army is very pleased with the performance of the system, which makes us very happy. After we've delivered that, we are still working with PTC Industries and have awarded them a contract for titanium parts, which again will be manufactured right here in India and be used for those systems all over the world. Those guns are in service again, US, UK, Australia. So that's another example of Indian industry operating in top tier systems globally for us in BAE Systems. Getting into empowering industry and getting into sort of catalyzing the exports piece. I think that comes for us within the supply chain. I'm going to skip some of the things. I wanted to talk a little bit about satellites. We have, an Azalea four cluster, 3 RF birds, and one sort of SAR bird, and edge computing on those satellites. And I wanted to talk about drones, but I don't want to take up too much more time. What is very clear to me as the leader of BAE Systems here is the government settings, the policies that support that, namely the DAP, and how we have to operate here. And what that means for BAE Systems is we must partner. And we heard that from the dignitaries this morning, unambiguously, that we must partner. So as a company, which is, our bread and butter, our day job is systems integration. It's complex project management and complex engineering management. For us to come in as a second tier technology partner is the only way for us to do business in India. I don't see, unless there's an emergency procurement under some particular circumstances, I don't see BAE Systems acting as a prime contractor in India going forward. And I'll leave you with that thought, because that's quite a profound thing for me to say, because in most countries, we are the prime, we go in and we have the relationship. So for us, it's building trusted partners. And I'm pleased to say we work with most Over the years, we've worked with most large and small organisations in defence industry within India. What more can be done? I think we can talk more about that when we get into the panel. Thank you.
Yes, Michael.
Hello. Thanks. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow panelists. Coming to Lockheed Martin, you all have heard from Adam. BAE Systems has been here for the last 70 years, but Lockheed Martin came here in 2010 out of no compulsion. Thanks, Mr. Patil, for recognizing that for us. We didn't come here because we were forced because of offsets or anything. We came here to work with our partner and manufacture in India. We were making in India well before all these terms had been developed. And over the last 14 years, we are nothing but very, very happy that we had taken that decision. Today, every C-130 that flies anywhere in the world, C-130J that flies anywhere in the world, new 130J flies anywhere in the world, it's flying with an empennage made in Adibatla in Hyderabad. That's the kind of trust and faith that Lockheed Martin has put into India. Uh, so we didn't just stop there. Very recently, just before COVID, we had also taken the decision to put in the F-16 fighter wings into India. The F-16 is still very, very prominent. It has a large order book, and it's going to be around for a long period of time. Those wings will now also be made in our JV with Tata's at Hyderabad. Again, no compulsion, nothing required, but Lockheed Martin decided that India needs to be a place to put work in excellent location, and that's why that has come in. We also had the S-92 cabins that were made here. It's the same cabin that flies the US president all over. It's the Marine One. And those cabins are made here in our JV, the Tata Sikorsky JV in Hyderabad. So that's the kind of commitment that Lockheed Martin has put and belief that they've put in India. As you all must have heard recently, we've now decided to open the first defense MRO in country for the C-130s. So it starts small. We start with Tata as a partner, and it could go, regional at some time and expand in numbers. Uh, all I want to say is that I think this is enough testimony that Lockheed Martin is very, very pleased to be in India. They think there's a lot of future in India. We would definitely like to put more and more work in India. However, it becomes difficult to do that when you already have a fixed supplier base, you have a established supply chain. There definitely needs to be some incentive, or there should be something that happens to make that change to bring things into India. We have a huge supply base in India for our wings, for the empennages, and now we'll come up for the MRO, close to about 500 suppliers, all feeding into the system. So all very good, and you see it happening. We started in a green field. I go to Hyderabad often. I'm sure a lot of pilots who are here have flown over those areas. Those were green fields. It was just rice fields in that area. And today, when you go there, you cannot make that place out. It's completely changed. When I went there initially, when I joined Lockheed Martin a little more than 5 years ago, I got lost. I found myself in the middle of a field. It wasn't even on GPS. And then I had to ask around and then found the location of TLMon. Today, it's chock-a-block. That area is full. And that's what I think we need to understand when we look at defense manufacturing. If we are looking at the numbers that Mr. Patil mentioned, it cannot happen overnight. It's not something that you can wave a wand and hit those numbers. It has to start slow. We've got so many examples to go by, whether it is the automotive industry in India and its growth from where it started to where it's reached. It's the same thing for any kind of manufacturing, for any industry, if you ask me. And I do feel we keep touting words like, demographic dividend, it's, cheap labor, India should be the place. But there has to be a catalyst that changes the status quo to bring work into India for a foreign OEM. What that changes is what I think possibly we can discuss a little later on, Mr. Patel, and how that could move forward. But being in Lockheed Martin, I'm very excited for both for India and for Lockheed Martin, for sure.
Thank you. Uh, now, of course, I'll go one after another to the one or SIDM chapter forum chairs. But in addition to that, people who actually have, in a way, achieved a lot in that short span of what they have been doing. I see few ingredients of why this success has actually happened. We still have a defense acquisition process in which nominations galore. And in that backdrop, till 2016, when we really opened up the defense exports, because the first discussion with Raksha Mantri, Manohar Parrikar as the Raksha Mantri, when it began, he says, what is that it takes to export? And we said the previous government simply said we are a nation of Mahatma Gandhi, we cannot export. And from that to sort of make a first basic document, which is where informal foundation of SIDM was getting in place, but the document was created. And this is what became the export guidelines of India. Now, from these export guidelines, we started in the private sector looking at nominations will not vanish overnight. What got categorized in 14, 15 would get into acquisition only 18, 19. So next 5 years, we'll have no opportunity. Where is an opportunity for industry? And that's where export became not a matter of choice. It became a matter of existence. And this is an hunger, which is what actually created over the subsequent years. If I look at last 7, 8 years when we've been doing exports, there have been years 92% exports came from private sector. Last year's numbers you heard in the morning, there have been 60% with the private sector. If I take the weighted average of these 7 years, it probably will be more than 75. Now, the question before they come in is if the 75% of the total exports of India have happened both with some of the fantastic foreign OEMs who believed in the country came here and taking the goods out. But in addition to that, the industry, which has now stifling effect on the acquisition here, now decides to go out. It's a hungry man when he goes out. Private sector agility makes things happen. And this is what you see in nutshell as to the success story of our exports. And this is why we see exports having really taken. Now, when you are able to do export, there are few things given. Is quality an issue? Is competitiveness an issue? They're no longer issues. If you are not good quality, you are not good in what you are delivering at right kind of prices, I don't think any customer in the world is coming to an Indian OEM for love. And this is an enormously important message in a way to the ministry. Of course, now in this part of the session, there's no ministry representatives present, but this is essentially the point to sort of take home that when you sort of start having separate blocks in an industry, the block which is hungry performs. And this is essentially where when MKU starts going to 120 countries, it's a time to celebrate. Now, let's hear from MKU. Uh, Neeraj, you're part of the story. तुझे जो अगर 2 मिनट एक्स्ट्रा माफ.
व्हाट इज द पहले तो मैं बोलूंगा थैंक यू इतना ऊपर ऊंचा ऊपर करने के लिए बट आई वुड से आई एम अ सिंपल humble man please thank you and also you were mentioning about the sea change that India has seen since Mr. Parikar came So I still remember there was a time when we wanted some kind of an endorsement from US Embassy to supply some equipment to US Marines, and their response was that we won't endorse you because you are not a government company. So that was the kind of embassy's response. Also, General Vinay Shankar, with whom we were trying to sell artillery guns to Colombia made by OFB. And then we were told by the ministry, try not to export. This is not India is looking at. So that's the kind of message since 2016 that India has seen. So I will talk a little bit about MKU. Uh, First of all, I would say at MKU, we are deeply committed to our mission of empowering heroes. This mission isn't just a tagline, it's a central to who we are as a company. We understand the critical importance of meeting the unique needs of our armed forces and law enforcement agencies here in India. It drives us not only excel but also innovate our products to meet international standards. Our dedication to indigenous innovation empowers us to develop solutions that enhance the capabilities of our defense forces while positioning MKU as a trusted provider of high quality products in global markets. Two key product ranges embody our commitment: the Kavro protection systems and Nitro optronics for both platforms and personnel. MKU has truly established itself as a global brand, recognized for our excellence and reliability in defense and security solutions. Our unwavering commitment to quality and innovation has allowed us to extend our footprint in over 100 countries. The trust we have built among defense forces worldwide, validated through rigorous testing and proven performance, fuels our relentless pursuit of excellence and dedication to our partners. Today, as we stand on the cusp of expanding our horizons, I am excited to share that we are adding a new product lines. This expansion is our way of leveraging the strong relationship that we have developed over the years, allowing us to better serve our clients' evolving needs. Our commitment to enhancing our export capabilities by diversifying our offerings and strengthening our international partnerships. By tapping into our extensive customer base, we aim to introduce new product lines that cater to specific market needs, broadening our impact globally. This approach isn't just about fulfilling domestic requirements, it's also about becoming a preferred choice among international players. As we continue to develop high quality, innovative solutions, our commitment to stringent quality standards will ensure that our products exceed the expectation of our global clientele, paving the, paving the way for sustainable growth. In conclusion, the journey toward a self reliant and global competitive Indian defense sector is well underway, and MKU remains committed to playing a key role in this transition. By focusing on indigenous innovation, establishing multi location production facilities, and leveraging our extensive customer base, we are equipped to address both domestic needs and global opportunities. This is a little bit about MKU. And, sir, as you mentioned, that what I feel that what are the reasons why MKU has been able to supply to so many countries. So, first, I would say, I think from very early on, we decided that the requirements in India are finite, and if we have to sustain our R&D activities, we have to move out of India. Otherwise, the R&D activities that we are doing, we will not be able to sustain only through Indian requirements. So that was one, I would say that was a strong will that we decided as a company. And the second thing that we really focused on developing niche technologies. And as a matter of fact, we were the first company in India to manufacture lightweight composite body armor. So MKU has always invested um, in developing its own IP, its own so that there are no restrictions as far as exports are concerned. We don't have to take any permissions from any foreign OEM or partners. Like for example, at today when we want to export some Russian platforms, I think we are stuck up. So MKU took that stand and always tried to develop the products and we own the IP of whatever products we are selling today. Secondly, I would say that I realize that the international business also, every country, every culture is very different from each other. Every country has different ways of procurement. So we really perfected the, I would say, the art of finding the right channel partners. I think that's also a key message for many companies here, is that finding the right partner in the country is also a key for getting a success. Otherwise, you can have the best product, but if you do not have the right channel to enter into the market, you will not be able to do so. Uh, and then when we started exports way back in 2003, one of the things that, and I still want to quote this, I remember in 2005, I was in Kuwait at the peak of the Iraq war. I was meeting a company, and the company was meeting me. He was seeing my products and everything. He was not knowing my name, did not remember my name. He did not remember my company name, because that at that point of time in 2005, it was known as M. Kumar Udyog. So he was not able to remember the name, connect to that. And so I really felt very bad. And the only thing that he knew was Gupta. And I'm sure here 10% of the people having the family name must be Gupta. So that was the only thing that he remembered. And if I felt very bad that, uh, what is this that he doesn't remember the name of the company? So then we changed the name of the company from M. Kumar Udyog to MKU, and then immediately people started um, connecting to us. I paid in 2005 30,000 euros to buy MKU.com from a German company. That also helped in building up a brand. So what I'm saying, and also you just now mentioned that MKU was quite visible at Eurosatory this year in Paris, because we were at the entrance. And I would say yes, as soon as Eurosatory finishes, immediately my team goes and jumps and books the same space all the time. So I think that's a kind of a commitment that is there. And as we all say, jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai. So we believe in that theory. So so this is where I would say uh, we have been able to make a mark in the international market. Today, although we are not a very, very large OEM, but MKU name globally is not that unknown today. So we participate in a lot of international exhibitions wherever we see our focus. We participate in those exhibitions. We participate on almost like 25 to 30 international exhibitions a year. Sometimes they are very, very small for a specific country, but it helps us to connect to the end users to understand their requirement, their needs. And at the same time, um, we wherever I try to work, I always try to first find the right channel partner to work, then only I try to work there. Another thing that also helped us is the acquisition of the German company way back in 2008. So I think at that point of time, nobody believed a company coming from India can do something good. So I think although we got a technology for armoring of helicopter, ships, and boats from the German company, but at the same time, also it also enhanced the MKU brand. That, oh, okay, now MKU is also a European brand, also present in a NATO country. So that also helped us in building the brand as well. Uh, Last thing I would say that a lot of times I always say that Indians are very good in problem solving. So probably I give an example that in iPhone, maybe the most of the software that is being done, or inside the electronics or the chips, it must be all the Indians. But when it comes to seeing the mobile itself as a finishing, as an interface, everything else, which is not really, let's say, in terms of defense way, I would say maybe it is not really required in your testing parameters. But then if the product is not comfortable enough to use, or the product is not looking aesthetically good, because today's soldier, they want to, everybody looks like want to look like an Iron Man, or he wants to use the most sophisticated equipment. At least the product may not be good, but he wants to feel like an Iron Man. So the product not only should perform to the technical specs, but it should also look very good aesthetically, and should also be easy to operate from a user point of view. That is also makes a lot of difference. So these are the few things that I just wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Puneet?
I think Neeraj has said a lot about the opportunities and challenges in this industry. But I think I would kind of address in four parts. Um, Mr. Patil had asked me to share about our experiences and opportunities and challenges that we have faced. So I would divide this into four parts. First, I will explain a little bit about Samtel, the story, the successes, of course, the challenges and the opportunities. So if you look at our story, which is, it goes, as Mr. Patil said, beyond my lifetime. Um it started before I was born. It's a 50-year-old group. We have completed 50 years last year. We got into aerospace and defense close to more than 20 years ago. And the first 3.5 decades or so were in the electronic industry, in the consumer electronic industry, where we were manufacturing consumer electronic products like picture tubes, etc. Coming to our experience over the last 2 decades in defense, I think I would like to say that first of all, it's a journey which is you need a lot of patience, you need a lot of resilience, you need you know you need consistency, of course, and you should be conscious about the fact that nothing is going to happen in a very short time. When we started way back in 2001, 2002, and then we got a contract from DRDO around that same time, 2003, 2004. Uh, we didn't know that it will take us so long before we would actually start manufacturing. It took us more than 6 years for our first product to go into manufacturing for Indian Air Force. And it was by far, a very challenging product, always imported in the countries that till that time. And subsequently, we got a JV with HAL, and we have now on pretty much all the platforms that we make. I mean that they make for Indian Air Force, and of course a lot of MRO. The journey was very difficult, but at the same time, Samtel has always been a company which looks at global market for its products. And for aerospace, it was not very different for us. We were from the very beginning. In fact, the way we got into defense was through an acquisition we did in Germany. So that's how we got to know about this sector about 22, 23 years ago. But actually, after that, we have formed many, many relationships in our journey. We have had a joint venture with Thales, as you all know, in the past. Then we got into multiple suppliers agreements, supplier customer agreements with companies like Honeywell. We worked with, of course, Adam is sitting here with BAE. And we continue to work with multiple global forces as we speak, customers. We are working with, we just got a contract, actually, some of you might not know, from Malaysian Air Force, where we are going to supply the Sukhoi, the MFDs for all the Sukhois, and also looking at the head-up displays for the Sukhois. So, these are the kind of products that we've been making for the world and now being recognized by global air forces around the world. Coming to, the coming to the challenges again, I must say that, as I said, the journey was difficult. You need to be consistent. But most importantly, when you're building a company, an ecosystem, you need to make sure that you develop skills. As you all know, skill is a big challenge in our country, and it was not very different for us. When you have to give products for global standards, or the quality standards that the customers in the global market are looking for, you need to have those skills to cater to those markets. And we have worked continuously on kind of independently developing those skills in our company for global markets, for Indian customers. And this journey is the journey which probably is at the heart of the problem of India's growth story also. I think skills, we have discussed many times, even including in the National Council, that skill is a problem which will be kind of, if not addressed, we will not be able to meet the kind of growth rates that India is aspiring for. And that probably is a big challenge which we all together need to address. We have addressed it in our own way, and I'm sure that this will continue to be addressed as we grow. I think another few things I want to mention here is when we work with a global player, as Neeraj mentioned, of course, the market is a very important aspect because you get the continuous kind of quarter on quarter demand, which is required to keep a entrepreneur going or keep a business growing, because Indian markets can be kind of not consistent at times. So you need multiple customers that come from overseas. But more than that, you develop a culture in your company, a culture that you develop when you work with some of the best in the world is its value is in gold. You develop a work culture which comes when you work with companies like I mentioned earlier over a period of time. And I think for us, we were lucky we got those opportunities at a very early stage of our journey, and we kind of imbibed them for customers henceforth. And I'm sure Neeraji and whoever is doing exports would agree with me. uh, so best practices, the correct work culture, the kind of those things that you learn from when you work with them. At the end, I would like to say, the opportunities that Indian government and Indian MOD has given to to the suppliers like us are immense. But at the same time, there's the sky is the even sky is not the limit when it comes to global markets. We are working with global players over a period of time. We are getting established, but I think the goals that Indian government has set for its Indian players would be realized over the period of time in the coming years, and I'm sure that India would do very well once they kind of imbibe on those things that I mentioned over the coming years. And I'm sure that India would be a star in its own way. Thank you.
Thank you, Puneet. Now, we heard two Indian, I would say OEMs, because in their own rights, they have one clear message: IP, global relationships, their own softwares, and have a concept of what it takes to sell in a global market. As I said, because you are not able to sell first here and grow to the extent what you would want. Now, this is a cliche in that sense. We want to do more and more in the country. There's a capability, but the market has, even today, after 20 years, 24 years of opening, still has barriers. Now, on that backdrop, I want to now bring Brinda in with a completely futuristic business model and the kind of challenges and problems which is truly being built for a global scale. Brinda, all yours.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, and thank you for your constant faith in what we do, and being disruptive in general. Um, so I think so. It starts with the thing that you said when you were giving my introduction. I'm not from the semiconductor space. I'm not from the defense space, right? So frankly, what business do I have to be starting and running this kind of a company? I think the answer comes from the fact that disruption always comes from the outside. And in order to be able to chip away at something like this, futuristic technologies, protected technologies, critical technologies, if you're not disruptive in your asks, in your ambitions, and in just being blunt, you're not going to be able to push that needle. So going back to our company, we first started off as a semiconductor design company. The Indian Army first put its faith in us, followed by the Indian Air Force. This was when the IDEX program was first launched back in 2019. Um, Defense innovation was not a buzzword at that time. It was before its time, right at the very early days. So some people had faith in an ecosystem and an idea. And that's where it really started. It's tough. So semiconductors are one of those things that while we have huge volumes of manpower in India, in some kind of a strange colonialism, they still work for foreign MNCs. Right? All of the IP, for example, for the 5G chip, you'll be I was brokenhearted to hear this, that all of the IP for the 5G chip was created in Bangalore by Indians working for a foreign company, because it's one of those areas which, like defense, is a high barrier to entry. It's a high skill intensive business. And usually the people working in it are so daunted by that scale and size that they don't take that leap of faith. They don't take that opportunity. So I think it takes somebody from the outside to say, let's try and disrupt this. A great example of that, is Mr. Kalyani. He wasn't from the defense industry. He was from the forging industry. And he says, but why can't we do the same thing in defense? And I think it's that initial leap of faith. That's sort of where it starts. The second is, I personally believe that the Indian startup ecosystem is really ripe for disruption if we're able to sort out a few things: policies, partnerships, and regulatory barriers. The reason I say policy and regulatory barriers differently is because what defines a startup in defense today is that it needs to be dual use. The same way my colleagues running Indian OEMs know that they cannot work with only one customer, one market. The same way startups need to think about being dual use in their core. The IP needs to be used in some other sector other than defense. And we're seeing that proliferate world over. Defense is a great starting market, but after that, scale, volume, growth comes when you're able to optimize for commercial markets. As an example, China's entire semiconductor ecosystem was started by the military. Today, they're competing with the US on AI technologies in semiconductors. But 25 years ago, it was the PLA who first incubated their first NVIDIA copycat as a company that made a radar chipset for their satellites. They used that to grow the entire space program, which has really proliferated China's strategic advantages, especially when we look at our geographies. But it allowed them to build a supply chain, it allowed them to build a base. Very few people remember that the US missile program is where Texas Instruments was born. For the first 15 years of the existence of the company, they served only the US military. And then, when Intel came along and broke off, an entire revolution started, which led to smartphones. So, either way, it's always going to be the same thing. Disruptive technologies will come from this sector and then have to proliferate into wider markets. The reason policy and regulatory barriers are two flip sides of the same coin: policy in ensuring that startups get a space to innovate, to be bold, to fail, and to do so with no paucity of funds. That's the regulatory side. And then the policy side is, how do we make these technologies widely applicable? How do we have chips being used, for example, from a defense sector in the automotive market or in the telecom market? Because ultimately, government in our country is one of the biggest buyers. So, how do we proliferate across multiple different ministries, multiple different buyer agencies? And the third is partnerships. A startup cannot exist in silos. A startup has to exist in partnership with a prime, with a large system integrator. Those cross connections, I think, are where SIDM plays a really important role in the Indian ecosystem of connecting our startups who have components, individual niche pieces of technology, which can become important parts of the Indian supply chain, but also the global supply chain. For example, we have a long standing partnership with General Atomics. That faith, that conviction early on, giving us that first break, that is where the entire wheel starts to churn and things start to change. Really, it helps both sides. It helps the larger companies find and build local supply chains, increase indigenous content, reduce costs, reduce vulnerabilities in supply chain. But then it also helps them absorb new and emerging technologies much faster than if they were trying to do it either themselves or through imports. So we all have a role to play over here. And I think if we stress on these three parts: partnerships, regulatory issues, and policy, we'll be able to make a significant amount of impact. Those have been the three pillars on how we have built our company. Working with the US government, I think everybody in this room knows it can be extremely challenging. But when a framework, like I said, got created, we were the first to ask for bold things. And to everyone's surprise, they were able to break it down and make it available. I think those are the kind of innovations that we're looking for even on the policy side. We now have a similar arrangement with the UK, We have a similar technology arrangement coming up with Japan and China. It gives us an ability. It is, I think, a once in a lifetime opportunity for the Indian industry to say, can we go out? Can we be bold in our partnerships? Can we think of futuristic technologies? And can we partner in a collaborative way with these countries, with these companies to do something meaningful, create that resilience, and to take it forward from there? Thank you.
We have seen that we made good progress till the point in time where we are sitting in now. The earlier targets, what we had always heard before today, was by 2029, $10 billion, 83,000 crores. We heard today morning from Raksha Mantri, 83,000 crore may be a stated objective, but what he'll be happy with is 1.5. Now, if that 150,000 crore was to happen, there's something much more that is going to be needed. Uh, 2 minutes. So I want to go through all the five speakers, just 2 points on how to take that 5.5 times leap. What is that you want more to happen again from the government to sort of make the government do it? What is that you want us at SIDM to do? Punit, I'll start with you from the end.
I think more than what government should do, we should realize that we need to first play our own part. Uh, we are always it's always easy to say what is government not doing, but are we ourselves as as a industry doing enough? We don't introspect, we don't look inside. But we kind of keep on saying government should do this, government should do that, customer should that. So are we first of all doing enough, because there's enough on the plate to kind of absorb. I think the other thing that you have mentioned, but I'll repeat, and I think it came out very consistently both from Neeraj and Rinda, was we should continue to develop IP. So R&D and continue to develop IP. I think it's not done enough. In fact, I believe that to increase turnovers in the companies, if you're not spending enough on developing IPs and spending enough on R&D, that those turnovers would never be achieved. Those will be only pipeline dreams if you look over 3 or 5 years. So you need to continuously develop IP, and I think introspect when we look at ourselves as an industry. Thank you.
Well said. When you say you, government, there are three that look at me. What do I do before I ask the government? Well said, very well said. Neeraj.
Sir, I would like to stress upon one very basic thing, please. As far as exports are concerned, although, of course, please, we keep on appreciating government for the promptness in issuing export authorizations, right? This is something I would say there still needs to be done, because if the consignment is delayed, somewhere it's affecting Indian brand of Indian companies. Although it's something very basic, or even a small thing to carry samples to an exhibition, if things do not happen on time, you are not able to take your samples to the exhibition. So I think, plus, for example, last month there was a company that brought some kind of a system to us, and then I asked them, do you need an export authorization to bring this kind of an electro-optical system to display to the end users? He said, no, I have all the authorization. I don't need any authorization. I just brought them in carne. So I think a lot of simplification has to be done in this, which will help India to pull exports. One. Two, I feel that so many companies in India are making equipment for Indian Army. I don't know why they shy in going out and selling equipments to the international market. My request to all of them is, please don't shy away. Go out to international markets and start selling your products.
So the 2 points, reach out, and of course, as you said, simplification of what needs to be done. Ramesh, this is the DPC agenda item. Note it down. Yeah, that's what. That's what. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Can I second what Naresh said in relation to export approvals? Because it's our suppliers trying to export to us, and then there's a delay that can cause shipments to ships not to leave the port even, and that's a big problem for the Indian company who's dependent on that revenue. So that's an excellent point. My 2 points are: one, we need to get the category right under DAP. Uh, if you are doing something which has been around forever, do you really need the IP? Now, that's probably a controversial question to pose at this time of the day after what we've heard. But if you're talking about a combat vehicle where it's known knowns and we all understand what the system is, how much do you really want to argue around the intellectual property rights? Now, if you're talking about uh, niche and future or deep technologies, like Verinder was talking about, then yes, you need to have that IP. So, number one, we have to have the category right, because if the category is correct, if we go for IDDM and there's intricacies in relation to, it could be foreign governments own IP, and it doesn't rest with the company. And even if it is with the company, it's hard enough to negotiate. So categorization, which informs my second point, speed to market. Warfighters need to be able to fight tonight. And when programs go for 1, maybe 2 decades before they even get to a contract, I don't think that's servicing the warfighter. So that would be my 2 points.
Well said. Again, in a way, spread out, reach out, spread your market. Second, as you very rightly said, the category has to be right. There's enormous amount of debate and committees which are working incidentally on this part. And today there's absolute clarity. You don't have to have subsystem IPs here. There was a time when we used to say in our acquisition, for an engine, the valve technology has to be owned by the Indian OEM. Those days are gone. So obviously we are now clear in terms of what we want. As long as the overall system architecture ownership and the IP at that level stays here, subsystems can come. Michael.
Right, so just a couple of thoughts. Like I've been given two thoughts, but I'll draw on my experience as an ex-Indian Air Force officer, and since we are talking about defense, I always think that for defense you really need very cutting edge. You need to stay ahead of your competition. Earlier, we had a very different outlook with regard to who we were up against and what were we looking at in terms of our uh, uh, combat requirements. That's changed completely. We've just heard from Vrinda where people are as far as capabilities are concerned, and we know who we are actually looking at today. We cannot take ourselves and our armed forces for granted, and I would really be very uncomfortable if they get something that wouldn't be able to stand the test against the opposition that they are likely to come across. So I do feel, and I'm saying this not because I'm Lockheed Martin, so I'll just wear both my hats just now, and that we need to. I also heard from the panelists about R&D and where we need how much of R&D is definitely not cheap. It's not easy for anyone to come here. Virinda will agree with me. It's very hard, especially in defense. It's expensive. It's high risk. It's high gestation periods. Everything else like that. So I really feel, speaking as an Indian and from Lockheed Martin, I really feel that uh, partnerships is what will take India to that higher end of niche capability, and that is what our policies should dictate. They should open up and they should encourage partnerships with cutting edge defense manufacturers. Very honestly, you cannot wait and say that I will do this and then I will generate enough revenues to now start off research and development and then move forward, especially in defense. You When something does happen, we've seen it happening just now. I mean, it's totally it's unpredictable, and then you'd be left holding the can. So I truly feel that defense has got a little different set of of uh, the framework is slightly different from what it is from the other manufacturing parts. So that's the point that I want to make. And in a little lighter vein, I heard somebody say, Jo dikta hai, bikta hai. I got very worried because that F-35 is never seen on radar.
On the radar. Physically, it's visible. Vrinda.
So I think I would agree with almost everything that everyone has said. So couple of things. I think nuance is very important over here, and I think the problem with too much policy making is we lose nuance. What category does a product fit in for export approvals? Uh, New introduction of new categories as and when they come up, because I think Neeraj ji is right. Delay is a deterioration of brand India, right? I recently had a situation where a simple test equipment was delayed by 1.5 months. And it was very difficult to have that conversation with the customer without feeling awkward or embarrassed about our policies and our products. So that's one thing. The same nuance I think we need to think of in terms of India's growth. At the system, subsystem, and critical technology level, what is important to us in terms of IP? System architecture, 100%, because otherwise we can't mobilize. But is subsystem important, or is critical IP important? Or is a partnership the best approach to get to something like this? The second is in that nuance, we have this concept of Indian design, Indian manufactured as one category. I think we need to make an extension now to Indian manufactured as a separate category and Indian designed as a separate category. And that nuance needs to be made very, we need to flesh it out threadbare as we look at the next round of our acquisition policies. The second is, sir, and I think this is while we look at the Defense Export Promotion Council, we need to look at one more sector, which is can we create a body for interministerial um, guidance for the defense ecosystem? Right, export is definitely one part of it, but constantly those in the defense industry need support from other ministries, and we need a way to be able to work with them.
Thank you for, I would say, putting the elephant in the room.
So
I
I'll
must,
say one last point.
yeah, sorry, go
So
ahead.
my last point is urgency. I think there was a there's been a lot of talk about how we are already behind, right? Both as a country, but also our armed forces, the equipment that they have available to them. And there's a complete lack of urgency, right? We need to do much more, much faster. And that would be really the ask from the government. How do we scale up with more speed? Thank you.
Speed, we heard. Last word what Randa said actually talks of speed. The first point she said, all our categorization in that sense, even for export, is rear view mirror driven. We can't go forward looking backwards. And I think that's a point very powerfully, very well said. The obviously we need to do far more and be conscious that the decision making delay on a file is a loss of brand. Point she made it, I think the same point Neeraj also made it, extremely important for alacrity in terms of the decision making. In that sense, that small WhatsApp group which the export group actually started, I was telling the secretary while sitting here on the dais that this started as a WhatsApp group. Things happened on the WhatsApp group bilaterally. So Vajpayee ji used to ask us कि कल सवेरे 9 बजे के पहले I want this information and this data, and reverse we were asking ये what where is this license stuck and please have it cleared. So I said these kind of informal forums without the confidentiality being talked about in open starts making a huge difference. I think we need to create that forum. I must say in the space because it is recent opening. This intergovernmental group exists. It meets every 1 month. So this is not unthinkable. Because the space department is very small, it had alacrity to have it created, realized through discussion. Another aspect, this is a board which has two industry people, two PSUs, two private. We are not seeing anything of that kind in Ministry of Defense. And why Ministry of Defense remains slow is simply because they don't have a voice of industry representing what industry's pains are right at the decision making stage, which is what space benefited. So this group exists. Why I said putting the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room exists everywhere, but the fact is people don't speak. I think good point to ask. I'm sure all these 10 points, rather 11, Vrunda had 3. So the 11 points become extremely relevant. Good to have a cricket team to act upon. Thank you so much.
So the house is open now for some questions in case
From the audience.
members of the audience want to ask any questions to our panelists.
Not a question, but submission. In all my experience thus far, why don't you introduce yourself first? Then is it required? I'm General Bhattacharjee, retired. I retired about 13 years back. Uh, there is always a feeling that I got when I've been traveling abroad and going everywhere. When I was in service, and now when I'm in the corporate circles for the last 12 years, the amount of handholding that our embassies, the DAs or the ambassadors do for the defense for helping us or sell our products is very limited. It needs to be energized. That much should suffice to give my statement.
Absolutely. We all have been going out of the country exactly 21 years. And we have experienced it. Early period, it was different. It started changing. Recent years, it's much better. But it can be infinitely superior. No. Tensaini. Sorry.
Just add to what he
Yeah.
said.
Sure. Go ahead.
So SIDM has already started this aspect of incorporating DAs into our forums, or rather, Ministry of Defense has given these directions. We recently had around 18 DAs who were briefed by the SIDM, and we have our mutual exchange of contacts so that if any industry of that country wants an input or vice versa, it is available. There is a much better improvement as on today, and hopefully it will continue to improve. Thank you, sir. Sir, sorry.
So I'm a Marshal Bedi, retired. I'm not from industry, but I watch, I observe. So some comments and suggestions may come out. I think when India somehow I feel has a sense of entitlement that TOT must come to it. You know, when we say transfer of technology, we keep looking at technology engine and we keep demanding it must come to us. I think we have to realize that not people are not really going to part with their technology developed over, and we ourselves say R&D is so difficult, so expensive. How will someone just give the technology? And the exports that we are talking of is mostly copying the systems or things which have already been developed, and we make them in India and then export, and we say, okay, we have developed so much of exports. Now R&D looks far fetched because I think we are setting a very short term targets for us. We are taking of 5 years, 10 years, so we say you can't do much R&D. If we look at China, etc., I think they set 100 years, 200 years targets for them. Now if we see that, okay, where does India want to be after 100 years, then probably people can get into R&D, and some investment definitely can be made, and that is what will be developed India, and for which like Mr. Puneet Kaura said, skill development is very important. You see our engineering colleges, what infrastructure they have. Now quality cannot come only in defense manufacturing. It has to be overall culture in India. I mean, your carpenter has to get skilled, your plumber must be skilled. So in day to day technology that I see in my household should also come up for these, overall quality to come up to become export competitive in the future. Just a submission, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Selvathi.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the wonderful panel. I am Dr. Selvamurthy. I served DRDO for 40 years. I was DG DRDO for 10
Dr.
years.
Selvamurthy was a DG DRDO.
Yes. And now I am with the university. I am in the academic setup in Amity University as the Chancellor Amity University and also President of Amity Science, Technology and Innovation Foundation. I just want to bring one focus. If India has to become a leader in defense technology, one important sector is academia industry connect. Since I am talking to SIDM, there must be a strong focus and a mechanism available in SIDM and in the government to strongly connect and drive the academic institutions to bring out disruptive technologies. So this focus is still not being given, even though we are looking at what is needed today, what is needed maybe in a few years. But if you have to assume leadership role in niche areas, this is where even SIDM should create a special focus that the industry connect with academia, not only IITs, NITs, central universities, private universities. I think this resource is still not being fully utilized. So I want to submit to the panel to look at this and also SIDM
Yeah,
to
we
create
spoke
a
during the
special
AGM
focus on
day,
that.
and we have taken your suggestion very seriously.
Thank you. Thank you
We
very
will
much.
we will go forward on that. That's exactly what I said on the AGM day. Manish.
Can I have the mic now?
Sorry.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm General Inderjeet Singh. I am an engineer, a former engineer from the Indian Army. Currently, I'm a strategic advisor to Idea Forge. Thank you, panel. Some very, very baseline suggestions which have come from all of you. I do find the SIDM is trying to help the Indian defense manufacturers in a big way. But let me give you what happens on the ground. Uh, the DAs, yes, they've got a mandate to try and push, try and help, try and get leads. But and we have a secretary, the first secretary commerce, whose major job is to try and see how Indian industries can find a way into foreign markets. Very recently, we went across to the land forces, Australia. We spent more than a week. We went across to Canberra, and we found, unfortunately, there was no time. The first secretary had no time to meet us, despite being available. The DA, I won't name him, also spent exactly half a second with us. So we are totally on our own. We find we have meetings here where the foreign DAs come here. I'm sorry, they just come for a cup of tea. When we try to reach out to them, it's because they've been called, they come. I have yet to find any lead. We've been working on with a large number of our DAs, with our own defense, embassies, high commissions. I'm not sure where the gap is there. The SIDM wants to do a lot, and I must compliment them. But at the working level, at the cutting edge, we just don't find any empathy. I mean, there are no targets, there's nothing. They're just going on with business as usual. There's not a complaint. Let me give you some ground realities. It's nothing. So if we really want to move on, we have to, move collectively as a nation. There's a lot of big talk, a lot of big figures. But what happens at the end of the day?
Jan Singh, I must say this is something which is not first time we are hearing. In different words from different people, we've been hearing, and this is exactly the reason there's a different organization which is getting created, which is the Defense Export Promotion Council. Now, obviously, Defense Export Promotion Council will start small, but when it grows, obviously we will want to do many things. Leveraging again, you know that CIA exists in at least what 75 countries,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what an organization which is tuned more towards industry can actually contribute. And government was, I must say, knowing its own, call it, we heard Rajnath ji saying, we know we can do some, we can't do some. So I think it's good to take the input, keep it at the back of mind. What we need to achieve, let's work towards that.
No, Mr. Patil, we are totally with you. My complaint, it's not a complaint, it's just I don't find any passion.
That's what.
Let me tell you very, very
I agree
frankly.
with you.
I mean, a lot of big talk,
No,
no passion.
I'm from an industry 50 years nearly.
Yeah.
What
And we've seen you growing
what
actually with the
gets
LNT.
measured
Yeah.
gets done. I'm very clear about it. So if there's a measure, people will behave to that measure. Yes, Manish.
Hi, wonderful conversation. This is Manish Kumar Jha, editor for National Security. I work for government organization. Don't ask me. But my question is one fundamentally based on, in fact, privilege to have many discussion with Patil ji on the question of R&D by the private Indian companies in India, largely in the defense sector. While government said, look, we have a DRDO, one single organization does entire things from missile to aircraft, basically. And the private sector says, look, we have our challenges. It's a large sector investment. Defense is a heavy investment. You have been also talking about. Private sector said, look, give me some more incentive. And government say, you need to put some money out of your order into your R&D. What is the case where we can find equilibrium, which we want to address the skill set for the India, technical expertise and speed and skill, what we're talking about? In fact, this is a question to you, Mr. Patil, how we find the balance. Thank you.
You are addressing specifically to me or to the panel?
It's a good
I-
opportunity to.
Manish, if it is you and me, we'll talk about it outside.
But for the national interest, I need to raise it,
No,
sir, for the national interest.
I can be very hard hitting. It's not good to do from a dais. Okay. Tell me one country in which any research has happened in the strategic domain without government. How do you expect that somebody without business will start putting tons of money on the table? Where is this expectation coming out of? Why say that if I can't do it in the government sector, you guys come and put your own money without a guarantee I will even buy it? The basic flaw in your system is if I do a completely revolutionary product and then I say, here it is on offer. You heard in the morning a question which Ashok Kanodia asked, if I build an IP, will you buy it? That time you understand as government of India, and I'm now telling you as an advisor on that side, tell me why do you ask for multiple tenders? बाहर जाता है तो मल्टीपल टेंडर से खरीदता है क्या? So let's be very sensitive about this aspect. When you ask shareholders' money to be put onto the table, government must have as much a responsibility to say, I will buy it from you single party. You will start seeing wonders happen. Manohar Parrikar understood this. Again, it's not I'm talking today. He understood 2016 for the first time. IDDM, you need not have two bids. Has it been implemented in 2024? Why? I can tell you 5 instances of major program going beyond 30,000 crores, which have been diluted to go to buy and make Indian. That means we must have a foreigner in when 100% solution is available in India. Tell me what is the logic? So when we talk, we have to be absolutely at the background, backdrop on the mind that what we speak first behave to what we speak. You have a right as government to ask and demand when you behave to what you promised. If you don't, industry will keep finding reasons to say, पहले आप promise करो, फिर मैं करूँगा. Why for make program everybody beelines? Because government says partnership. I will put money, you also put money. We don't have a problem when you want to come and put money. But don't expect my money to be put. Don't want to give me order. After that, any development, and I can tell you 100 MSMEs will stand and speak what I'm mentioning now. I do a product development, thereafter it is given to some big fellow. So we are in the real world. So that's exactly where it is. And if we want to speak more, Manish and me will speak outside.
So,
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
so my name is Ramit Arora. I'm from Aeroshul Technologies. So my question to this panel is that we're talking about partnerships, and partnerships are important. But I want to flip this partnership word. It is not only partnerships with big technology partners or with people who are primes or who have already got ripe technologies. My suggestion is that we should also think about partners with. There are a lot of startups in India. uh, Primes should, whether it is foreign primes or Indian primes, we're talking about partnerships with startups. How many of us are thinking about that? And I have worked in a big company, I worked in a startup, and I'm telling you, the work with these people are doing is phenomenal. And just don't only look for ripe technologies. That is that try to get in before the ripe technologies are made. That would be the key, sir. This is for the topic of the panel, empowering Indian defense industry.
I can only tell you one thing. There are 4 people seated on the dais who are startups. There are 3 much younger. I started it 40 years back. So that's it. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Vineet Chaudhary is my name. That's my son Varun Chaudhary. My question is to the panelists in context to homologation process of critical components, especially on aviation. And my question comes from a personal experience where I was involved in homologating radial technology, radial tire on Jaguar aircraft. And it took me 14 years of my life. We started in 2000, and the first flying trials were completed finally 2014. The first commercial order came in 2014. So 16 years spent. I did it just because it was my crazy passion. And my partners internationally said 3 layers of generations retired. They said, nahi hoga India mein. I said, nahi, main karke dikhaunga. I did it. But having said that, it had set in a big fatigue into me. I had 2 more projects. My son, when he joined, he said, Dad, let's do it. I said, don't waste your lifetime. So, my question to the panelists is, has the scenario changed today? Critical components, the entire is not a simple product. It's very, very high tech and very high technology. Please.
The short answer is no, but the long one can take a long time to answer. But reality is that there are two parts to the coin, and there are two sides to the coin in this. One is that I don't know about the challenges of your product, but from our experience, the product sometimes development wise also takes a long time. Of course, there are hurdles that aerospace, especially aerospace and defense. When you start a journey in developing something, it takes time. Sometimes when you're doing it for the first time in the country, for example, like in our case, there were delays. Honestly, there were delays, and so we have learned. And now when we are looking at new projects, which are similar capability, the delays, or sorry, the timelines are more accurate. So when you travel a certain amount of journey and your experiences kick in, I think the gestation periods become reasonably more accurate. But at the same time, there is no easy answer to this. As I said, it's still taking a long time. It can take, I don't know, 16 years was too long, but it remains a challenge for sure.
I fully appreciate your answer. My only point here could be a lot of things like 45 years of experience in this industry. Still, in India, it is a lot about the individual who's sitting on the other side of the table. It's not the system driving. I have 30 years of engineering experience, and the man sitting in front of me is a fresh 2 years GET from some college in Timbuktu. And he has the cheek to write what he wants and derail the whole project. So, individuals is the way of life in India. If they like your face, very good. If they don't like your face, policies is very good. But systems, documented procedures, okay, something has come up for approval, the file must move on. Right or wrong, it must move on.
Vinitji, you
Yeah.
can pray that those items get banned. You heard the Raksha Mantri saying positive indigenization list. Lobby, you will take 1/100th of the time to lobby and get that item included in PIL. फिर देखना लोग आपके पीछे भागेंगे.
I'm Radhakrishnan Varia from Linear Engineering.
Yeah, I think it's we are here for 1.5 hours. There's supposed to be 1 hour session. I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we started ahead of schedule. We are now delayed. So back to you.
Well, then, sir, back to you for the vote of thanks.
I can say that when all credit to the secretarial team to actually plan a this kind of a spectrum. You heard what I talked about each one of them. To have a spectrum of this kind of people sitting on one dais, I think itself half job done. Because in terms of saying that we really have some global success stories among us. We may have lots of bad stories or bad examples among us in terms of what has not happened. But the idea of this kind of a panel is to say, if we say that there's something which we are doing in India, we have two success stories of things happening in India from a foreigner's perspective. And you heard them, I was hearing them very carefully. Both have said they're very happy. I think that's extremely important because it is not that people have come out of compulsion or because of offset or because of some other, call it a carrot on a stick being held in front of you, but people have actually come in and done things. Now, to have those people being invited on the panel has its own value add. Now, we heard the three, and I still use that word, the young Turks. Now, the three young Turks actually have shown a way in terms of how to do things and not just talk about it, but actually having created two true success stories and one astronomically going to be powerful and going to be a success in making. And we thought, why not? These are our own, younger population within SIDM as chairs. All three of them actually chair some committees today. And that's the way forward. We thought it's good to have this kind of a thing done. I repeat, Ramesh, job well done in terms of picking up the speakers for the session. My special thanks to all of you. Post lunch, I didn't see anybody sleeping because I'm sitting here and I'm watching if anybody is trying to do that. Especially to sort of be attentive in a post lunch session is important. And thanks to all of you for that. Thank you all my panelists for opening up and speaking their mind out. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
May I request Mr. Jayanti Patil, past president of SIDM, to please present these special gifts to all the panelists. This is almost now a tradition at the SIDM that little plants are given as gifts so that we are always watching them grow and inspired by their growth. May I now request Mr. Rajinder Singh Bhatia, President SIDM. And the special gift for Mr. Patil for moderating this session.
Thank you.
So group photograph is very important, sir. Without the group photograph, there's no proof this session ever happened.
She is such a tall personality. It makes us feel like beginning that time. And that 500 pound gorilla actually that time.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we come to the end of the annual session and SIDM Champion Awards 2024. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll look forward to your continued support and presence at the next SIDM event. Thank you. Jai Hind.